Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to SF Commons. Once in a while, we see a local political campaign that brings to light a major issue that is raging throughout the nation. Such is the case with this local political campaign, the campaign for sheriff in Santa Clara County. It's a long time coming that we, as a society, looks at the criminal justice system. There's a clamor for bail reform. There's a clamor for decriminalizing certain non-violent offenses such as the possession and use of marijuana. We also are looking at the way the mentally ill inmates are being treated in the jail system. Before I introduce our next guest, John Hirokawa, who's running for Santa Clara Sheriff, I want to show you this clip, a very sad case of Michael Tyree, a prison inmate in Santa Clara County, who was beaten to death by his guards. It's a sad case all around. But now we get to look at what we can do to make sure this does not happen again.
And after a guilty verdict in the trial of 3 Santa Clara County jail guards. Late today, they were convicted in the beating death of a mentally ill inmate. KPX 5's Len Ramirez with a reaction outside the courthouse a short time ago. Len?
Well, it was a very dramatic finale to this trial. The 3 correctional deputies all found guilty of second-degree murder for the killing of mentally ill inmate Michael Tyree. Now, the jury did make that decision this afternoon. It was a very packed courtroom filled with the wives and the family members of the 3 deputies, now former deputies. During the reading of the verdicts, there were tears, people crying from the family members. The 3 defendants, all dressed in suits, were then immediately remanded into custody by the bailiffs, taken back inside the jail where this all began in August of 2015. The coroner's report said Michael Tyree died of internal injuries after being beaten inside his jail cell. Now, the case pointed out glaring problems within the jail system and resulted in several reforms that are still ongoing, such as cameras that are in the jail now.
We're proud that justice was served and that those that are culpable are behind bars.
It's a sad day when law enforcement officers are convicted, when those who are sworn to uphold the law and protect others instead choose to victimize and, in this case, kill a mentally ill inmate. So it's a very sad day. It's a day of justice, but it's a day of sadness.
The jury hung on counts 2 and 3 of the case, which had to do with the beating of a separate inmate, so the judge declared a mistrial on those counts. The second-degree murder conviction, though, could result in a prison term of 15 years to life for each of the 3 defendants involved. They were taken here into Santa Clara County Jail, but because of their status as correctional deputies, now former correctional deputies, they will likely be housed in a neighboring jail facility, such as the Santa Rita Jail in Alameda County, until their sentencing, which is on September 15th.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you Mr. John Hirokawa.
Reform is about making changes, positive, progressive changes for both the custody bureau for the jails, as the clip has shown, and also for what we call the street enforcement in the community. And so my platform is making those changes, finding vital solutions to keep our community safe in general in all of Santa Clara County. In regards to the jail reforms, so I was part of the sheriff's office for over 35 years. I rose through the ranks, obtained the second in command, which is called the undersheriff. And I soon, when we were then responsible, the sheriff's office for the jail starting in July 1st, 2010, I came to realize that more progressive changes, especially how we dealt with the seriously mentally ill in custodies and how we were dealing with them and how we needed to take different approaches to make sure, one, they didn't come back in the jail, but to make sure they were safe in our jails. And so as we were approaching the 2015 year, I started consulting jail experts, mental health experts, and came up with strategic plans about how to deal with these things. Unfortunately, it was a little too late because August of 2015, The 3 correctional deputies beat Mr. Michael Tyree, and as you could see by the clip, they were convicted. But that doesn't mean we stop. I believe that in the memory of Mr. Michael Tyree, that we continued diligently to continue the reforms that need to be happen in the jail. But we need to listen to the experts, the outside experts, consultants who were brought in to make those reforms before and after the Tyree death. And I believe that there's still mistakes being made, not listening to consultants, and that's why there have been numerous other suicides in the jail that had occurred at the Elmwood facility in Milpitas, and another murder in the jail of Mr. Davis, who was beaten to death by another seriously mentally ill inmate that a lot of people are unaware. And I believe these could have all been avoided if we had listened more so, if the current administration had listened to the jail expert.
In San Francisco, we, as in a lot of cities in California, we have a serious homeless problem. There are quite a few who are mentally ill. If those mentally ill homeless people commit a misdemeanor or any crime, they end up in jail. So you have a population in jail that should be getting mental health and healthcare treatment as opposed to being incarcerated, mixed up with people who are sane but who are criminals. What do you think about that?
In Santa Clara County, the jail population hovers around 3,300 inmates. Of those 3,300 inmates, about 1,000 of them are seriously mentally ill.
That's quite a bit. That's
Yes.
a lot.
And so how you address that, now the sad fact is, this is not just an issue in California, this is an issue across the United States. But, so they're spread out, but the unfortunate fact is that our local jails have now become the warehouse for the mentally ill, almost a defunct asylum. And that's not the appropriate, let's just say, appropriate location or appropriate
That's
way
horrible.
to warehouse. It is. And so how we go about doing that, I believe there needs, one, they shouldn't be housed in jails, the seriously mentally ill, especially who've committed, let's just say, lower level crimes. Really, they need mental health treatment and mental health facilities, and not being warehoused in our county jails. One, it's a lot more costly because you have to have the security and you have to have the jail guards on top of the mental health, custody health providers. And so there's a two-prong on that. And so it's more expensive to house them in our local jails. But I call for different reforms in regards to providing additional beds out of custody and deal with the mental illness, not charge them and not go through the court system in regard. And then now you talk about the courts, the cost of public defenders, the cost of the district attorney, the cost of the judge, the cost of transporting them to the jails. It's so costly to do this, especially their issue is not so much that they committed a crime, it's more about they're mentally ill. And so trying to find different types of beds, trying to find facilities to house them so they get mental health treatment, there needs to be a solution. But as the sheriff, until those solutions are more viable, you then have to address how they're being treated in the jails. And so you don't have the Michael Tyrees, you don't have Mr. Davis, you don't have these murderers in the jail, and that they're safe and they're being treated safely. And so those are the issues moving forward. You have to have a plan. You don't react. You have to be proactive in how you approach these issues.
Well, let me ask you something. For mental health inmates, for mentally ill inmates, doesn't the county get monies from the state?
Not necessarily because of this. So when they're in the jail, they have committed a crime. Could be. And so because they've committed a crime, now they're awaiting adjudication. When they're awaiting adjudication on local charges and they have not been convicted, that is the responsibility of the county.
The budget for the sheriff's office is what, $305 million?
So the entire budget, including the field enforcement patrol, The entire budget is somewhere around $350 million.
$350 million, that's quite a bit.
With about 15 to 1,800 employees.
Wow.
It's a large operation.
And you have 15 cities in the county, which includes Palo Alto, Gilroy, Sunnyvale, San Jose.
San Jose is the largest.
Those
And so
altos.
most, let's just say most of the constituents and the voters in Santa Clara County, I understandably are concerned about their local police department that protect them.
Right.
City of San Jose is the largest police force
Right.
because of the largest population. And then from Palo Alto to Mountain View, Los Altos, Gilroy, Morgan Hill, Milpitas, and Campbell, Los Gatos. So they're more so they pay more attention to their local police because those are the men and women who are protecting them day to day. The sheriff's office has broader responsibilities to include the jail and the courts, and then certain cities that we protect and unincorporated areas. So, but the sheriff is the elected official, and by state constitution is the chief law enforcement officer in the county.
Mm-hmm.
So many times, how the sheriff collaborates and reaches out, her constituents are from Palo Alto to Gilroy to San Jose.
Right, right.
And so what I believe needs to happen, and hasn't happened for at least 15 years, there has been no outreach from the sheriff, not a subordinate of the sheriff, but the sheriff, to listen to the community, to engage them, to hear what their concerns are and their issues, and then how we can help and collaborate with the local law enforcement, San Jose PD, Palo Alto PD, Gilroy, how we could help them keep our communities safe, how we can collaborate. Law enforcement is a huge responsibility out in the community.
Right.
To keep, whether property crimes, from car burglaries to vandalism, all the way up to homicides. So those are important issues about how local law enforcement pulls together to keep our communities safe. And that's really, I believe, should be at the forefront of your elected sheriff. San Francisco is unique because it's a city and county.
Right.
Predominantly, the field enforcement's responsibility, investigations, street enforcement is the responsibility of your fire department in San Francisco Police Department. In Santa Clara County, there are numerous cities, 15 within the county. And so some cities choose to have a police department, some cities choose not to. Cupertino is the largest one. And so the sheriff's office is the police department in the city of Cupertino. So we have those responsibilities, but we also have vast unincorporated areas. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Little under, I think, 1,300 square miles of Santa Clara County. The vast majority of the county is actually east of Highway 101. The valley down 280, 101 through Palo Alto to Gilroy runs through the central of the valley, Silicon Valley. And so the majority of the population is in that valley on those corridors. But the vast majority of the land is east of 101 in the foothills. And so their residents and their cities and up through Highway 17, 880 to the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so there are a lot of small communities in there that are not in a city that are responsibility of the sheriff's office. So we have different types of roles. We have courts, jails, patrol, detectives. Those are the largest divisions, but we have two major bureaus, the jails and patrol. And when you commit a crime, whether
Right.
mentally ill or not, you can be arrested.
Right.
Sometimes you could be, depending on the charge, you could be cite and released out in the field is the term. Or the police officer or deputy sheriff can take you to jail.
Right.
You are booked into the jail. We prepare a report. The arresting officer prepares a report, and then it goes to the district attorney's office to determine whether charges are filed or not.
Right.
If charges are not filed in a timely manner, then what happens is the jail has to release you because you haven't been formally charged,
Right.
also called arraignment. So if the DA charges you, then you have an arraignment of
Right.
a formal hearing of the charges to get out of jail to guarantee your appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be bail is the most known.
And if they cannot afford bail?
Yes, if they can't afford bail, but there is also pretrial release, also called own reconnaissance.
Right.
Or the jail, depending on the charges, can also from the jail cite and release you and have you promise to appear in court.
Right.
But if none of those, if you don't qualify or you don't bail out, then you're held for arraignment, and then the judge then decides whether to release you on supervised pretrial release or to hold you in custody until you could bail, or to the next hearing. Okay, and so that's the process until your court date before either a bench trial or a jury trial, and then you're either found guilty, not guilty, or it's a hung jury. Yes, and you asked a question earlier. Why don't we keep them together in jail?
Right.
You got to remember that there are different levels of mental illness. There's a category called seriously mentally ill, SMI. Actually, different levels in regards to their mental health status, whether they're violent, nonviolent. So so it's really the responsibility of what we call our classification officers, deputies, and the mental health providers, and counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, that then determine where and what the appropriate housing can be.
Right.
Okay, and so that's why they are housed in different areas at different parts of the jail, and so we can get them the best type of programming for them, and so they do receive training in the academy on how to deal with the mentally ill and suicides and detect suicides.
Right.
They also get training after what we call advanced officer training. So throughout their career, they get these trainings. But after the death of Michael Tyree, the County Board of Supervisors called for additional training and additional funding. And so since the jail reforms, and this is very expensive, and that's why there needs to be planning. There needs to be choices and decisions made based on what's best for the staff, the inmates, and the community as a whole, because the county has probably spent, since the death of Michael Tyree, or the last 2 years, about $350 million just on jail reforms, which include training. So additional training is now being provided to the deputies who work the jails, including new use of force policies. But here is my concern. My concern is you could train. Exactly. But does it, so I don't believe in just, because we increase the training in certain topics, we just check off the box. But then to evaluate the training itself. So how was it received among the staff? Did it impact them? Did they feel that it was effective? Did we reach them in regards to the training and how to deal with the mentally ill in the jails, how to deal with use of force and dealing with the mentally ill in the jails, in the entire inmate population? So is this saying we got them the training, now we could walk away, I think is an error. I believe that there needs to be an evaluation in regards to that training. And I believe, I'm adamantly a believer that bringing outside or other community members into that training to help train our officers, to give them a better understanding, not only on the mentally ill, but also diversity and cultural awareness, that we engage. See, we engage more of our community members in our county, because Santa Clara County is a pretty diverse county. Ethnicities, socioeconomics, LGBTQ. Can avoid a lot of the issues in regards to, let's just say, mistrust or conflicts within the communities that we serve. And we are public servants. Right. And so that's what I'm hoping to make these changes if I'm elected sheriff.
How about aligning with the other counties?
And so, because you're right, we're in a mobile society in California. Exactly. And so the criminals don't stay in one place. Many crimes in Santa Clara County are being committed by people outside of our county. Right. And so, but with the cities, as with the other counties, there needs to be more coordination. And so with that comes the collaboration. Now, I do have the endorsements of the rank and file of the surrounding counties. Oh, excellent. So deputy sheriff's associations that represent the men and women that protect the people in those counties have endorsed me. Right. So would it be Contra Costa County, Alameda County, San Mateo County, Santa Cruz County, out to Monterey County? Right. So there needs to be community involvement. Right. All programs that I've studied start with all effective, long-term programs have always started with community involvement. Right. we could put as many cops, deputies out in the street. That helps. A lot of times short term. It needs to be backed with community involvement, community input, how we go about doing this. And there are a lot of ways we could do that. There's a lot of technology. Technology is huge these days in regards to how we effectively deploy, assign hours, shifts. Those are all strategic things that we can do in regards to what I believe is over the years, complacency, felt that didn't have to make the changes, not evaluate other programs throughout the United States.
When is your election?
So November, so I, myself and the incumbent, 5-term incumbent, are now in a runoff.
Oh, I see. So you had a primary.
Primary, so for
Was
the
it
first...
the top two also?
Top two.
Okay.
Top two if there was not a 50% plus one vote.
Oh, I see.
So for the first time in, I guess, so in 5 elections, there is now a runoff. And so I was able, based on my supporters who are very enthusiastic, very excited for hope that I will hope that there can now be some changes. And they know that I will make those changes and that they will be positive and progressive. And they know that I will bring back the integrity, honesty, and transparency to this office. And so there's a lot of excitement. And so now we're going into the general election come November for the first time in 5 elections.
That's what, 20 years?
20 years since 1998, and the current incumbent won that runoff in 98. But since then, always primary. This is the first time.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us again tonight. See you next time.